seen Great Kid Norton said, of all the titles I've been privileged to have, Dad has always been the best. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, is being a father, being a dad, being daddy. It's something that's very, very personal to me, and I think it should be personal to every man out there. So why is it personal to me? Well, for a couple of reasons. First, I came from a home where my parents were divorced. My dad was in the military. He wasn't always there. It had a lot of impacts on me, emotionally, behaviorally, but also when I found out my wife was having our son, I wanted to be the best dad I could possibly be. How was I going to do this? I had to research, figure out what was the right way, what was the wrong way. So I dove into my research and I made some really disturbing finds. Increasingly, men are refusing to be engaged fathers. So let's talk about being an engaged father. You can be an engaged father and not be present, okay? So this isn't to take away from the deployed military person or even the divorced husband. We have Skype, we have Zoom, we have phone calls, we have visitation. You can be engaged and not be present. On the other hand, you can be under the same roof and not be engaged. I personally know people that spend all day playing video games. They won't let their kids touch their video games. They won't play their video games with their kids. They ignore their kids for the sake of video games. What a missed opportunity. Why not let your kids sit down and play a video game with you? It's a missed opportunity to bond with your kid. It also equates to being an absentee father while you're at home. The key is you need to be there for your kids. And why? Well, there's some impacts. There's emotional impacts. In a study or an article put out by Edward Kruk, he tells us that children with absentee fathers are more prone to suicide, they're more likely to abuse substances, be depressed, or suffer from anxiety. I know I suffered from depression when I was a kid. I remember when I was in 5th grade being called to the office so I could talk to a counselor. It wasn't very comfortable for me, but it was something needed because I had that emotional suffering. And that suffering is something that lasts. That emotional damage lasts a lifetime and can follow you around. I always was looking for the father figure. I always felt like I didn't measure up. And that's what not having an engaged father can do to you. You're always looking. So I got my counseling. I pushed through, but I wasn't without my share of problems. And those problems come with having an absentee father. By the way, my father and I have since reconciled, and we are great now. So absentee fatherhood also has behavioral ramifications. So the Fatherhood Project, or Fatherhood Initiative, tells us that children with absentee fathers are more likely to abuse substances, commit a crime, or become incarcerated. And that children with absentee fathers are twice as likely to drop out of high school. An article published by Edward Kruk tells us that 90% of runaways and 85% of incarcerated youth have absentee fathers. Let me say that again. 90% of runaways and 85% of incarcerated youth have absentee fathers. So think of the effect on society we could have by getting dads back engaged, back in the home, and being there for their kids. Okay? So Barack Obama, in one of his Father's Day speeches, said, "Any fool can have a child. That doesn't make you a father. It's the courage to raise a child that makes you a father." Now, regardless of your politics, that statement could not be more true. Barack Obama was a great father to his kids, and he talked the talk and walked the walk. So he told us what it means to be a father. Any fool can have a child. That doesn't make you a father. It's the courage to raise the child that makes you a father. Pretty serious statement there. So what are the positive effects for having an engaged child? Well, or engaged father, I'm sorry. Children with engaged fathers have better coping skills. They can manage their stress and anxiety better. That's according to the Children's Bureau in an article they published. The Children's Bureau also told us that fathers who remain engaged, their their children are less prone to behavioral issues. So fathers' times engage with their children, teach them boundaries that they might not otherwise be taught. And finally, the type of play that comes from a father and a child, that physical, roughhousing type play, teaches kids balance, cognitive skills, empathy, and tolerance for frustration. It's really that important. It's important to be a father. So what's the right way to be a dad? I have a hint. There is no right way. Being there is the right way. Being there and being a role model. So Fred Rogers, from the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, said anyone who does anything to help a child in his life is a hero. So let's talk about that. Do we have to be a birth father to be a role model? No, we don't. As a matter of fact, father figures are an effective tool as well. Bavone Ritchie told us in an article that she had published that male role models or father figures, whether biological father or not, can have a similar long-term impact on children. Pretty important. So you don't have to be a dad. You can join Big Brothers. You can be a father figure. You can, if you're a stepdad, take that child under your wing. There are ways to be involved in children's lives that give them that role model that they so desperately need in this day and age. Finally, the Reverend Billy Graham said a good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society. This is really important. As you've seen from the data, just in this talk alone, fatherhood is important. Engaged fatherhood is critically important. And we as dads have to get back into the house and be engaged. And it pays off. I'll tell you a story. My son was diagnosed with autism a few years ago. He gets really discouraged sometimes. One of the things I often tell him is, William, you can do anything you want to do. Well, about a year and a half ago, he came to me and said, Dad, if I can do anything I want to do, then you can do anything you want to do, and you keep talking about going back to college, but you don't go back to college. Well, you know, my son turned it around on me. He showed me that being a role model to him, he can be a role model to me as well. And that made me so proud in that moment. So folks, let's get dads back in the house. Let's get father figures involved. Let's make a difference in society. For more information, please see the following